unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
Have you ever heard of Dirtybird? I mean, you've heard of dirty birds, right? The old term. But have you ever heard of Dirtybird Records? Well, they're kind of a fun electronic dance music little outfit with lots of DJs and creators making fun dance music. I met them over a decade ago. They hired me to do some promo photos and magazine shoots, and I eventually ended up playing. I directed a video, made a video for Claude Von Stroke, who was playing a character named Barry Drift. And he was singing in the video, which he doesn't normally do. And he did a good job, but he didn't want people to know that he was singing. So he hired me to direct and star in a video playing the part of Barry Drift. So I lip sync and stuff like that. But it's really Claude. It's really Barclay Crenshaw is his name. He is the mad genius, I think. He is the main guy in charge of Dirtybird Records. And, it's not... Electronic music isn't something I totally follow or anything. I knew Dirtybird had a following. I knew they were popular, but they've become much more popular. So they do this thing called the Dirtybird Campout, and I've done some promo photos for that too. And they've invited me to come along. Barclay and his wife, his nice, lovely wife, Andy, have invited me to come to the campout. And I've always kind of planned to go, but they've never had... I'm kind of like a little princess, so I need to have a shady spot to camp. I can't be in the sun. And before, they were doing it at places where I'd look on Google Maps and I didn't see any trees. So I'd be like, that doesn't look like my style, But so over the years, they've invited me a number of times, and I just haven't gone for whatever reason. But this year, because I have the piano van, and a friend of mine, Alexandria, was going, I thought... I was surprised that my friend Alexandria knew who they were. She was like, I love them, they're great. And I was like, well, I know those guys. And she was impressed that I knew them. She had no idea. She had no idea that I was directed in a video and starred in one. Anyway, I got cool points for that. But since she was going, I thought, well, I'll write Andy a note. I wrote her a note, told her about my piano van. She says, absolutely, please come, bring the piano van, blah, 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 blah. And so I went out to Modesto Reservoir, right? And honestly, when I got there, I couldn't believe how big it was. Like, we're talking... I've gone to these campouts before, and usually there's, 1,000 people or whatever, which is, you put, 1,000 cars, and that's a lot of cars. But this was like 10,000, huge, like big, huge field just filled with RVs and tents and, people dressed up in their own... The Dirtybird Campout is kind of taken the old jamboree feel. If anybody was a Boy Scout, they've taken the Boy Scouting jamboree thing and turned it into their summer campout. So everybody wears these scouting outfits, that they have merit badges, and they're basically looking like derelict Boy Scouts, It's kind of like Boy Scouting meets Insane Clown Posse meets Burning Man, somewhere in between. Only a little less methy, way less methy than Insane Clown Posse, and way less serious and spiritual than Burning Man. So they've always kind of wrote, this is what I like about Dirtybird, is where some house music gets into this weird spiritual shit, you know, and then there's other kind of house music that all goes for sexy. We got to be super sexy, you know. But Dirtybird has, they're just got enough silliness, just plain silliness and fun, right? That's really what you could say about Dirtybird. It's all about silliness and having fun. Really, not much deeper than that. And that's not an insult, by the way, because fun is important, I think. I love fun. I have fun tattooed on my body to remind me to have fun, because I'm not very good at it. But anyway, so I got there, you know, and it used to be in the days when when I wear the 3-piece suit and look like myself, I can just kind of all access go anywhere. But I've been that way for a long time, but I've been kind of out of the loop for the last, it's almost getting, about 5 or 6 years. Not being social, you know. I don't wear the 3-piece suits. I wear a jumper, a flight suit. Anyway, so I get there, and my credentials that they give me are just kind of normal. I get a camping pass. I'm like, oh, that sucks. I don't have artist credentials, you know. That doesn't normally bother me because I just go where I want to go anywhere. But this is a weird festival and like all these different areas to drive and camp spots. So I spent the first couple of hours trying to find my way around and realizing, oh shit, this is huge. This is not the typical San Francisco crowd where I know a bunch of people. And all the people I knew were the artists back in their little areas, and I didn't have the artist credentials because I wasn't coming out as a DJ. So I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to be here. I parked in a space and watched all these kids walking by, and they're all in their early 20s, mid-20s, you know. And I'm thinking, they're fans. And I haven't mingled with fans for a long time. I stopped going to concerts right out of high school. Right after my Mormon mission, I started promoting concerts. And so my whole life in the music business has been behind the scenes, not in front of the scenes. So I'm sitting there thinking, am I going to be in front of the scenes with this piano van? Just driving around these campsites, singing these sad songs to kids? And I was thinking, I don't know, man. These kids didn't come to hear sad songs. They came to hear fun songs, Dirtybird, party, you know. And I was thinking about this. My music is all lyric driven and melody driven, and that's precisely what has been stripped away out of electronic dance music. And there's a good reason why, because that beat is basically just sex simulation. You know, that oonce, 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 that's basically at the tempo of sex, basically. You take the words out of it so nobody has to worry about whether or not a song applies to them or not. They just want to get on the dance floor, wiggle their bodies around to show what they would look like naked. It's basically just peacocking. It's mating rituals, right? Let me tell you, being 52 and watching that from the outside, it gets really weird watching that mating ritual on a grand scale like that, with lyrics and melody completely removed from the equation. So it gets really super just tribal, and it's really tribal because they even separate their scouting groups into various dens and, little teams where they compete. It's like a jamboree, like I told you, a big scouting event. Anyway, so that first day, it was supposed to be a weekend camp out, and I'm feeling like, oh God, I don't know if I can stick around here. I knew that people that I knew would be backstage, but I didn't have the right credentials. I was like, I don't know about getting back there, and I don't want to bother anybody because having promoted shows for a long time, you just don't want to be bothered by somebody with lots of needs, lots of princess needs like me, So I thought about just leaving. I recorded a podcast, and then about all that, but there was no internet out there, so I didn't upload it. And by the time I was done, I didn't feel like it. Anyway, I digress. So I was feeling all insecure about it, trying to find a spot, trying to find Alexandra. She wasn't answering her phone because the cell phone service was non-existent out there, you know. Typed a message to Barkley. He didn't respond. Same kind of reason. You look at your texts and you see that they're not delivered. You know, things aren't getting delivered. Things aren't going through. I'm thinking, I'm just going to get the fuck out of here. But then I thought, no, I'll stay one night. Stayed a night. And then, fast forward, I see Barkley driving around. Or I see Alexandria. And I say, well, let's just go walking around, you know. And I'm feeling all weird walking around with those 20-year-olds. And then this vehicle, Burning Man looking vehicle, it was like one of those four-wheel off-road vehicle type things, you know, that they use on farms and shit, like beefed up golf cart. It's all dressed like, it's all decorated up with fake fur, and there's a bird's nest on top with mirrored disco mirror ball eggs on it. And I'm walking around with Alexandra, and she just fucking loves Dirtybird. She can't believe that I know those guys, right? We're walking around the festival, and I'm feeling all weird about even being there. I'm glad that at least my friend Alex is there. And this vehicle comes driving up, and lo and behold, some guy yelling through the megaphone. Turn around, and he yells, "Merkley!" You hear it coming from the megaphone, right? And it's Barkley, Claude Von Stroke, right? And so he stops, gets out, and gives me a big hug. And, of course, Alex is impressed by this. He is immediately mobbed by many people, and he's asking his photographer to take pictures of him with me and us together. And he's the same old nice, friendly person I've ever known. Big guy, tall, you know. Big guy, looks just like a scout leader. He's wearing a big raccoon hat, you know. Looks like a cover with patches. Anyway, so that makes me think, okay, well, at least there's one person I know. I ask him where he's going to be, blah, blah, blah. But he still doesn't know my van, you know. I didn't have time. He's surrounded by fans. I didn't have time to say, hey, listen, you haven't seen my van. I've got this van. It's a piano van. And I'm thinking about singing songs, you know. You know, it's not something you want to explain to somebody, especially when they're being mobbed by a bunch of people, you know, asking for autographs and photographs. And they're literally like, you're like a dad to me. You don't understand. I've been meaning to tell you this. I've been to the campout. I guess they do these campouts all over the place in Detroit, West Coast, East Coast, blah, blah, blah. I'm guessing they're big every time. I don't know. But it's a big deal, you know. But I don't get to tell them about my thing. So I'm thinking, well, I'm still kind of stuck back to stage one, you know. I only have my basic passes, you know, and my general vibe that gets me places because I'm older. So people don't really ask me questions much. But then I separate off. He goes his way. I go my way. I go back to my van. I think, am I going to start singing songs to people? Feel insecure about it. So I drive around and look for the Dirtybird vehicle, that same vehicle. And finally I see it that night, and I pull in to a place where I shouldn't have been, but nobody stopped me. And I just open the van. And then I see Claude and other people that I know. I open my van doors, turn it on, and I just start singing a song. And then everybody turns around, and one of the women, I guess the production manager, came up after. She was like, do you have proper credentials? We got to make sure you get the right credentials. And then from that point on, they went and got me the proper credentials so that I could go anywhere I wanted to, and I could be treated like the princess that I am. But did that make me feel better about being there? A little bit. But still, it's really weird to be in an environment with mostly young people who want to listen to sex music, breeding music, and then to play sad, slow songs. But I did it. I parked a few times. Over the course of the weekend, I probably played, 5 half-an-hour sets, which is basically, if you think about it, I played more than any other one artist at that event because those guys are DJs. They're not even playing. Nobody there was playing anything. There was one other band that was there, and I know those guys too, Pillow Talk. I ran into them. It was nice to see them. But they were the only other band there that was actually playing. Everybody else is just playing tracks. They're DJs. Nobody's playing live music. So out of that whole festival, I was really the only singer. I don't think anybody else was singing. I didn't hear any singing. And I played multiple sets. And I found, I would pull up in these little offshoot places where it wasn't, because they've got all these different camps of, booming bass music. And so to find a place where you can play to some people, and I just pulled into places where there was little rivers of people playing. And everybody was nice, The kids that didn't care just kept walking, but I noticed there was this is a theme. It's usually older people in their mid 30s to 40s. They're the ones that stop and listen to the sad, tender music and applaud and give tips. And I got really nice feedback. It wasn't like when I do it in a city or somewhere completely unexpected. Because when you do it somewhere where it's completely unexpected, then you're the real spectacle, But in that environment, there's so many different art cars and RVs and renegade sound systems and crazy bicycles that people are kind of expecting it. So, it felt a lot weirder. I was a lot more, I don't know if you'd call it insecure, but apprehensive about performing. I'm glad that I did, but I spent more time driving around contemplating playing than I did actual playing. But all in all, it was fun, and I had some nice moments, and people signed up on my email list, as they do, and I got tips. People tip a lot, too. I think that what happens is people want to... This is what I also don't understand. I was calculating the money. I think the baseline tickets were like $250, right, for the weekend. And I'm doing the calculations. 10,000 people times 250, that's a lot of money. But that's the baseline, because most of the tickets were probably $350 for an RV spot. And then full packages for the full RV hookups was like $600. And there were probably 1,000 of those. I mean, there was a lot of goddamn money generated from that thing. I couldn't believe it. But not only that, so these kids are paying that kind of money for tickets. I mean, hell, when I was promoting concerts, people would complain if the ticket was over $10. You know what I mean? And these kids not only have that disposable income to pay for the camp out, but then even then, they're tipping $20 and shit like that. I'm like, I don't know where these kids are getting all their money. But anyway, so that was my weekend. It was weird. It was weird, man. I'm telling you, singing songs out of my van as an anonymous person is the whole point of it is to send me through the experiences that I have to go through. It's such an emotional roller coaster. It's so weird. It's confronting my own personal fears, getting in that mode, powering through the fear and doing it anyway, It's like I want the awkward moment, but it's still hard to get through the awkward moment. You know what I mean? But so I've made that my own personal challenge, and when I do it, it's rewarding. But I'm telling you, it's a roller coaster, because when you're in that van, it's a really strange existential thing, because at one moment you'll play for 30 people who just absolutely love it, and will totally feel what I'm putting out, and then half an hour later, I'll do the same thing for another group, and you're invisible, And the thing as a performer is you can go, well, what did I do differently? And you can always trace it to something you did differently, like, oh, I rushed it, I wasn't actually feeling it. And you really start to realize, especially with these kinds of songs, how you really need to be in the moment to bring other people in the moment. And that is some tricky motherfucking shit. It really is. Because you're singing the song again, you're pulling over the van, you're the producer, you're the everything else, so there's no chance to really get into a headspace. Like in a typical performing environment, you can go into a dressing room and you can close your eyes and, really get into it. Or also because for a typical performer, the idea is that people have come to see you, so your fans are already prepped and waiting for you. So you get to feed off their energy because they're hoping for you. But man, with the van and you're just this random person, there's none of that. There's no expectations. People don't have any expectations. In fact, if they do have an expectation, it's like, ooh, who's this weird guy? It creates this uncomfortable moment, especially because I'm not pumping out the rave jams. If you're pumping out rock and roll's is, yeah, fuck you, I don't care, man. That's kind of expected when you're in that moment. But to open the doors and to not be doing that, but instead to be revealing super vulnerable, super tender, sad songs, it's a weird fucking thing. And I would be lying to say that it's not an existential roller coaster doing it. And that's by design, but also that just because you design something doesn't put you outside of it. Do you know what I mean? You can't just become an impartial observer just because you design something. It's still an absolute challenge. And it was that whole weekend, just the whole weekend of, I wouldn't call it existential crisis, but it's existential pondering, like, what the fuck am I doing? What the fuck is art all about? I mean, because let's just put it this way. By the time the second day rolled around and I was properly credentialed and everything like that, the Dirtybird family, treated me fantastically, No surprise. They're wonderful, nice people. Ushering me on stage, which is a weird thing too, man. There's this new weird thing in EDM where being backstage, it used to be that when you're backstage, but now what they're doing is they pull you on stage, right? And so this DJ's in this little booth, and then there's a bunch of people, there's a party on stage, right? And so it becomes this entourage-y weird thing, and I felt very uncomfortable on those on-stage moments. So they'd tell me to come up on stage with these performers who are, you look out and you see a sea of 5,000 people or whatever, and you're on stage and you're part of the spectacle. And I'm like, I don't know if I like this. Well, I didn't like it. I mean, you like the fact that somebody's treating you well and inviting you there, but I'm thinking there's no reason why I need to be up here. I'm not part of the show. I didn't create any of this music. Do you know what I mean? And so I would spend probably a total of one song on stage, and then I'd leave and go walk around or go spend time with Dum Dum in my van, And just going back and forth, not knowing what the fuck to do, Should I sing? Should I not sing? Anyway, now I'm rambling. But that was my weekend. What did you do this weekend? Huh? Did you have any existential crises? Is that plural? I don't know. Anyway, look up Dirtybird. Oh, one more thing before I go. The one thing that I was really, really impressed by this weekend was they had this beatboxing competition, and I met this guy. I watched him first. Well, first he met me. He came by. He's a very distinctive looking dude. Tall guy with big afro, glasses, handsome fella. But he saw me in my van. He's like, whoa, this is really cool, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I see him on stage performing, and they're doing these beatboxing thing, and I really can't believe how far beatboxing has come. This guy, with just his mouth, is able to create such a soundtrack. Like, the lowest bass notes I've ever heard, I don't even understand how it works, you know? Do not understand how they do it. But then the beatboxing competition guys started beatboxing together, and I sat there watching thinking, okay, so why does anybody even have a DJ? Why does anybody have any equipment more than just a microphone? Because these guys were making big soundscape sounds on the fly with their faces that I just couldn't believe. I was like, wow. It's like Reggie Watts times 10. And by the way, Reggie Watts was there too, and I intended to put myself in a position to say hi to him, because at one time we had a dinner together, and he bought me my first Uber. That's a story I'll say for some other time. But Reggie Watts is a fucking genius. If you haven't ever looked him up, look him up. He's one of the smartest dudes you'll ever see. Way, way more talented than he is getting credit for, I think. He's like the backup band for that English late night show guy, that pudgy guy, what's his name? That's Carpool Karaoke. But I think he should be way more famous than he is. But anyway, so I watch these guys. I'm totally amazed. And then this guy later was walking past my van again. I go, dude, I just saw you. It was fucking amazing. And he goes, yeah, we should jam later. And I was thinking that would be fun. Beatbox plus the piano. Never happened. Never saw him again. Except for I saw him on stage again with Eric B. and Rakim. By the way, I know this is going on too long, but Eric B. and Rakim had this terrible long introduction. And from what I can surmise is that they didn't show up on time. They were kind of sketchy. They did this long intro where they come out for about a half an hour. They had some other hype people. You ready for hear Eric B. and Rakim? We're going to bring them on in a minute. And I'm just like going, this intro is going on way too long. Turns out they keep trying to introduce Eric B. and Rakim. When he comes out, it's just Eric B. There's no Rakim. I don't know if he disappeared right before the show or if he didn't make it. I don't know if they were on their way from the airport. But they never even really acknowledged the fact that Rakim wasn't there. And Eric B. by himself had a terrible set. It was boring as fuck. Way too much time in between, just with jibber jabber. They didn't read their crowd well. Boring entourage on stage. Anyway, bad review for Eric B. and Rakim. The Dirtybird guys were much better on their own. They didn't need to try to pull in old hip-hop royalty for whatever reason they did. I don't know why. I'm guessing Barkley was a big fan of theirs. Maybe, I don't know. But they don't need to. My advice to Dirtybird is you don't need to try to pull legends in to make yourself look better. You know? Anyway, the big fuck up that I did this weekend was that I had planned on interviewing people and doing live podcasts from the event. And I should have. And I just didn't because I get busy doing other things. But next time, if I'm ever in that situation again, I promise to start bringing you more interviews with interesting people, be them random people, be them people like Barkley, although he probably would have been too busy. But other guys like that beatboxer, I probably could have made it work. I probably could have interviewed more people. And that would probably be more interesting than listening to me yammer on as I've done. So look for that in the future. More of me podcasting and interviewing people out in the wild. I was going to interview some of these random fans to drill down and see what they're all about and why they love the Campout so much. But I didn't. I didn't. I failed. But next time I will. Thanks for listening.